Hey, it's Neal. I forgot to record a proper intro, so here it is. Guest today is Paula Poundstone. Started stand-up in the early 80s at the age of 19 in San Francisco. Since then, she's done every imaginable type of special you can do. She's a killer comic, ton of crowd work. She doesn't like me calling it that, but that's what I call it. We talk about family, sobriety. She has foster kids. Should note, she had some sort of legal run-in with foster care early in the early 2000s. Seems to have worked out just dandy. And we had a great conversation. She's absurdly unique. Paula Poundstone.
What did you just say?
I said, don't you wish that you could take, what you've trained for, what you've learned at, like, say, whatever age, right? And
Over,
then
let's
time
say,
travel.
45 plus.
Yeah. And then time travel and go back and use those new skills.
Well, but I guess my question is, did you train? You trained for something else, and then you got a skill almost inadvertent. Do you know what I mean? Like
No.
it, meaning what did I train for?
Well, I feel like if I were to go back and be 40,
Yeah,
I could be really good at it.
got it.
Like an unbelievable. I would win, the annual 40 awards.
The very prestigious.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would be. People would, when my name would come up, people would go, "My God, she was unbelievable at 40."
Yeah. What didn't you know at 40? Because you're supposed to know by 40. Of course you don't.
No, you don't.
What didn't you know?
Well, I didn't quit drinking until after 40.
Is that true?
Yeah, I would prefer to have quit drinking a little earlier.
When did you quit drinking?
I can't remember. 23 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, but just in everything. I mean, that's one example and a dramatic example, but just in everything. After I left home, I would have just left it that way. I wouldn't have tried to
Fix it?
I wouldn't have tried to continue relationships with family members. I would have just gone, okay, that was it. Thanks. Good.
You've come to the right podcast.
Yeah.
I like where you're coming from. All right. Well, we've never met before, and I only know you through television and NPR.
And isn't it great that I just blurt stuff out?
Well,
By
no,
the way,
that's
that's
great.
another lesson. That's a lesson that I would use. That I talk so compulsively that I often, Gary Shandling used to do this great joke where he would say that he'd be on the couch with a woman making out and he'd be entirely naked and she'd still have a parka on, is the way he described it. And that's me in every conversation.
And that's 23 years after you've stopped drinking.
Yeah, because no, that was not a function. I'm sure it was worse when I drank, but that's not a function of alcohol. That's just.
And so why do you think you were drinking so much for most of your life?
Because, not for most of my life,
Well,
but
40
for a
40
stretch. I didn't drink for 40 years. I didn't
I guess
start as an infant.
25.
Because, boy,
You
that
would have if
that
you
would
could.
be a story that explained
be
itself. Because alcohol is addictive, and that's and you tell yourself.
Did you like it?
No.
You didn't, not the taste, but the experience of being drunk?
No.
No.
Here's what I was really addicted to for years. You know how people will say to you sometimes, they'll go, if you were to talk to young people, what advice would you give them?
Right.
And I used to go, well, I don't know. Now I have a standard thing that I say: avoid drama. When I was younger, I loved being somehow embroiled in drama. Looking back, it's embarrassing but that is just a brutally honest thing.
I've never heard someone say that.
Yeah.
That's
I just
really
loved,
interesting.
I was a high maintenance friend. I loved, the more angst I could have, the more difficulty I could find. I was just somehow, some part of me was delighted by it. And when you think about it, what would push that forward? Well, you know what? How about a drink? And looking back, I can honestly say it never, because people will say to themselves, well, it'll loosen me up, or, I'll, I don't know, somehow things will be easier. So, make something easier, make something more fun.
Yeah.
Not once.
Take
not
the
ever,
edge off.
Never, not once.
It put the edge on.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was a big old pain in the ass. And boy, do I wish I could time travel.
What when you say high maintenance friend, tell me about that because I'm thinking, am I a high maintenance friend? Tell
I
me
was
about being
just
a
a
high
big
maintenance.
pain in the ass because I was always upset about something. I was always, and sometimes it was something that I could, that with a couple of steps I could have solved, and.
And was it you didn't want to solve it? You wanted to be in the
No,
problem?
I think I liked being, the squeaky wheel. I think I liked being the person that had, some sort of challenge, and then didn't that mean that this person needed to help me or that person needed to help me? And I mean, I can't tell you how much I regret that, but that's just one of those things. I wish I could go. I have a fantasy in my head of there being like a giant pink pet eraser. Remember the big erasers that were pink and they were slanted on the ends?
Yep.
Like just going over my life timeline with a giant pink pet eraser just to get some sections out. Now, meanwhile, in that journey that I screwed up so badly of that behavior, I did, in fact, meet some really fun, nice people, and I wouldn't want to erase them all.
Yeah.
So I would have to get really detailed with my pink pet eraser.
Wouldn't a lot of it be your own behavior within these relationships, or you were attracting bad people?
No, I don't think I ever attracted bad people. No, I have really great taste for the most part in people that I hang out with. I just think that I would feel like the way I would sort of hook them in is I would be the person who required, who needed something.
Would it be service? Would it be emotional attention? What would it be?
I think emotional attention. Yeah. And I don't know. Didn't work out all that well. But somewhere along the way, like some sort of bottom feeder crustacean, I did shake that. I did crawl out of that shell.
What made you realize you were doing it?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think I kind of, I think I kind of always felt like a certain tug of consciousness about it, and I was just sort of able to swat that away for the longest time. And then, somewhere along the course of having kids, I went, you know what, that really needs to go by the wayside.
You were from a tricky family?
Everybody is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to say when people talk about the phrase that came up from therapists years ago was dysfunctional family. Everyone comes from a dysfunctional family. That's what the family is. It's two incredibly fucked up people who meet and sometimes mate and give birth to children who they fuck up exponentially. So when you think about it, generations from now, it's going to be worse.
Oh, do you think that the idea is like it ends with me? Do you think that's there's any realism to that?
What do you mean?
People think like, well, I'm not going to do to my kids what was done to me.
Oh, I think I have already in some ways. I mean, I think there are some things that I recognize, that I remember from growing up that I go, okay, I'm not going to do that. Little things. Here's an example. I was always being tormented about my hair, about my clothes, and that's from that was true socially, but it was also from my family constantly. That I
tormented about your hair,
about my hair, about the way I dressed, about the sort of way I was physically, and particularly the hair thing just went on and on. And so when my kids were growing up, one time when my middle daughter was in like preschool, she'd gotten herself dressed and she came out from her bedroom and, she had on some things that didn't sort of go together in the classic way. And so I looked at her and I said, do you want Mom to show you how to choose clothes that match? And she said no. And that was the last conversation about clothing that I ever had with them, except for when my daughters were like teenagers. So my daughters used to insist that I take them to Victoria's Secret and buy underwear it would be like $45 for something that wasn't more than 3 strings.
Yeah.
And, I did it because that's what they wanted. And I was, again, fine, whatever. Yep. It wouldn't be my choice, but go ahead. But outside, and so that I did tease them about. But outside of that, I never said a word about how anybody dressed.
You had foster kids?
Yeah, and then I adopted them.
How did you decide on like that was the way to do it?
What do you mean? Parenting?
Were you married? You never got
No,
married?
never got married. No, that was I'm happy for everybody else, but I just don't have a bone of that in my body. I just,
Pairing up,
yeah,
that type of thing?
yeah, I just don't. It's just
And the difficulty of raising kids on your own that was worth the solitude, so to speak?
I think that raising kids as a couple is probably a wonderful thing to do. I'm totally in support of those who do it. That's great. The idea that I would have to committee my decisions is just abhorrent to me. So no, I don't. It just wasn't. That was never in the cards. That was never going to happen. When I was younger, and I would think about my future, it never included kids.
Never included kids?
Not really. I wasn't one of those women who, felt like, oh, and someday I want to have a family.
And what changed your mind?
Probably my oldest daughter. I used to volunteer in a group home.
Uh-huh.
My oldest daughter was there. And I just fell in love. She was the cutest little baby I
What
ever
made
saw
you
in your life.
volunteer in a group home?
I had this feeling that I had something to give and that I wanted to be able to use it in a way that moved things forward in a bigger way.
How did you parent in terms of discipline?
Timeouts.
Yep. Into that work?
Not really, but not really.
What do you think works? Is there just wait it out?
My middle daughter used to, when she was just a toddler, like real, little, just walking. I mean, she was talking enough that she could understand the words that I was saying and stuff. But we always had a lot of cats, and she would, I'd be doing the dishes, and she would grab a cat and bite its ear. I forget for how long this phase lasted. And interestingly, as far as I know, the cats never retaliated, which I was, because I think cats kind of know, oh yeah, well that's like a kitten.
Yeah.
It's like a human kitten. But anyway, she used to grab my cats and bite their ears. And when she would do that, I mean, partly because I didn't want her being mean to the cat, but partly because she was going to get herself hurt doing that, So I would rush over and tell her no, and then I would say, now you have to go sit on the stairs. And she would go sit on the stairs, and then I would say, okay, you can get up. And then after a while, she would grab a cat, bite its ears, and then walk over and sit on the stairs. She never really put it together as a
turn herself in.
Yeah, exactly.
She thought that was part of her process.
She thought that after you have a big old bite of cat's ear, you rest.
Go have
I
a
think
seat.
that's what she came up with.
Think about what you did.
Yeah, I don't think about what you ever did, ever entered into the picture. And by the way, I don't know if it can, even for adults. I think that when you're upset about something, if you're angry with somebody, like say, I don't know, you're just, upset enough that you sort of lashed out as a kid or as an adult in such a way that you get called on it, and now you're sort of, put aside like, oh, now you have time to think about it. I don't think those are the thoughts that enter your head at that point.
I think you're just defensive.
Right. I think you're still angry.
And you're still justifying it.
Right. And
When
now
people-
you're
yeah.
now you're doubly mad because, well, now I've been busted for this thing and I still feel that other person did the blah, blah, blah. So I don't know when, I'm not sure that.
Well, that's the thing about like where people go like, I don't think they experience true remorse, or they go, you're sorry you got caught.
Right.
Yeah. Most people are sorry they got caught because they've already pre-justified it, whatever they were doing in their head. So have you ever felt pure remorse?
Yeah.
You have?
Yeah, absolutely.
At the right time for the right reason?
I don't know. But my point is just that I think here's an example. Okay. So after the Boston Marathon bombing,
Yeah.
two brothers,
Yep. Sarnon
for
or
whatever
something,
their
yeah.
reason, not an okay thing to do, no matter what your reason
Sure.
is. But they believe they have a reason, right? And so they do this terrible thing, and the younger brother apparently accidentally ran over his older brother and kills him during their
Shootout. Yeah.
whether trying to get away. And now eventually they catch the younger brother, and they put him in and they put him in jail. I can't remember if they right away put him, because where he is now is like such an unconstitutional facility, because no humans interact with him. A robot brings his food. He doesn't. That's a terrible thing. But
although that's how most people live in LA. But go ahead.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, now we're all moving into. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, we're all jealous of that guy. But when he first went to jail, and there was a video camera in his jail cell, and he would flip off. He would flip off the video camera, and that used to be on the news. Look at this guy. Look at it. He's flipping us off. like that was the worst thing he ever did.
Yeah.
Okay. At this point, this kid has no one who likes him. No one. And of course he's flipping off the video camera. Like, I would flip off the video camera. That's just the stupidest thing in the world. Once you've taken away, and for righteous reasons, but once you've put somebody in isolation,
there's no incentive to do the right thing.
Why would he? All of a sudden he's supposed to reach out to everybody?
Yeah.
That ship has sailed. That ain't gonna happen. But maybe over time he'll come to right. But in that moment, why would he do anything?
But also, maybe why
do
I need him to over time come back to? It's not going to bring anyone back,
right? Yeah. I always thought that was the funniest thing. That was people's reaction. It's like, okay. It's like when Trump posts the heinous things that he posts, and people will go, and it was in all caps. Like, okay, you know what? That is so not a worthy detail, right?
That's funny.
It means nothing.
Yeah.
It was in all caps, or I don't.
Yeah. It's like, that's your issue? That he hit all caps?
Boy, you locked that caps thing,
boy,
and
this
you've
guy.
gone that one step too far.
It's a sociopath.
Yeah, and don't you kids be thinking in all caps. You go to your room and you sit and think about what you've done, and I don't want to find out you were thinking in all caps.
What grade do you give yourself as a parent?
I don't grade myself as a parent.
Fair enough.
It's a useless pursuit.
So you just assume there's some, because my girlfriend has kids, she's like, yeah, I assume I've screwed them up somehow. I just don't know how yet.
Yeah. And then, and then there's the part that you have no control over. And it's
and what are you going to do at this point?
Pursuit. You just, there's that Great Impressions song, keep on pushing.
Yeah.
It's all you can do.
Yep.
It's all you can do. I mean, I went through one period of time in my life where I was a lot better at this than I am now, which is, every time I started to feel like, I wished that I had done this or I wished that I had done that. And it was a thought that would come into my head, like while I was doing chores or something, generally when I was alone, sifting the litter boxes or something. I think, well, I wish I'd done this. And every time I heard myself say that, I would just like screech the brakes like Fred Flintstone's feet in his car and go, and now what? Right? Because that's the only answer is now what?
Yeah.
All that is useless. And what it's going to do is I'm going to end up, another year from now, another month from now, or 10 years from now, having the same thoughts, because I didn't take the energy that I'm putting into this, regret that I didn't take it and just put it into the right now, so now what?
And does that end the thought?
A lot of times it used to. As I said, I'm not as good as at it now as I was then. But also that was when my kids were at home. And so a lot of it was, just like, okay, so, what do I need to do for them now? And again, you just don't control everything as a parent. And it's a funny idea. I'm not what my parents wanted me to be. They didn't, as parents, control things about me. When I started as a comic when I was 19, and people used to say to me, "What do your parents think about that?" And I would say, "I have no idea. I didn't ask them." And I used to tell that to my kids all the time, because you're going to do what you're going to do, And if I have an opinion and I happen to blurt it out, take it for what it's worth.
What's the goal with as a parent? Happy, healthy, what is it? Successful?
I think every parent would want their kids just to be happy in whatever form that takes.
On your Wikipedia, besides your blocks, which we have,
you can't believe anything on Wikipedia. It's a terrible idea. Well, the idea that everybody adds information.
Yeah, no, yes, I'm with you. The things that I found of interest were atheist, asexual. I don't know if
anything that begins with an A.
Yeah,
that's
I like
me
it.
all over.
No, I didn't get past the A's.
Yeah.
Atheist and asexual. Asshole, of course. I was gonna. That was the third one. Those were the two that I was like, oh, those are interesting. Asexual, because you must have been, if that's true, you must have been confused by it.
Confused by what?
I was listening to a podcast yesterday where the person was saying, like, it really wasn't a thing. Like, people didn't know that was a thing you could be. It was a thing you were, but you didn't know if anyone else was that. Well,
yeah, I think that's true for me. I don't know that I would, I've had so many people ask me about my sexuality, and what I always tell them is, when I find out, I'll let you know. Because I really, one time after a show, I usually do a meet and greet, and this mom came up with her high school kid, and the high school kid, it was a young girl, and she wanted to talk to me. She was so excited that I said that I was asexual, and she said, because so am I. And in my head, I was thinking, well, don't close off.
Yeah, it's
why
pretty
take
young.
on a label that's going to close off doors to you? Should you, should that not turn out to be the case? One of the things about my kids' generation that is so brilliant is that they'll say, they'll say, well, I'm gender fluid, or I'm bisexual, or I think it's brilliant, because why on earth lock yourself into a particular title when, who knows?
Yeah.
Right? What might transpire at some point in your life. And does it need to be labeled? I don't think so.
Did you find it, the person on the podcast, and this is a thought I've had as well, which is like, sexuality and needing sex and needing sexual attention is pretty time consuming.
Oh my gosh. When my kids were little, and we always had a lot of pets too, still do. And every minute was precious, and it was like, I was running in front of a, some sort of giant lawnmower all the time, just so much that had to get done, just in order to, keep them healthy and functioning and, still be bringing in money and all the things that you have to do as a parent. And I would always think to myself, my God, and there's people who have to, the idea, like I always said, I didn't used to go to sleep. I passed out, I just I would keep working, keep cleaning, and keep doing everything until I literally could not take another step forward. And I'm like, and there are people who at this point now would have to go into their bedrooms and have an activity.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
That's a horrible idea.
Yes.
But if it gives them something that I'm missing, well, good for them. But
did you ever look at it as like an advantage of like, was it alienating?
I think it's a great advantage. I think it's a great advantage. And you have to find the person.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. All the time to find the person.
Yes.
And then you have to put
and then by the way, that person you found, wrong person.
Yeah, exactly.
You just spent 8-9 years on the wrong person.
Yeah. And then you have to put up with, and then it gets mean.
And then you owe them money.
And then it gets mean with someone that knows so much about you. I mean, it just sounds like, yeah. I mean, I realize that if everyone were me, then there wouldn't be enough of us to go on. But I'm, I always say, to the rest of you, go have at it.
Yeah. And they did. They have.
Yeah.
Historically.
Yeah, they have.
And did you find it alienating, and then, or were you just like, I don't really care? Or did you ever go like, why am I not pursuing this in the way that other people are?
Oh, it definitely felt like there must be something horribly wrong with me. But there was a period of time where I sort of did go through the motions of because that's what I thought you were supposed to do, and so there was a period of time where I. Like as a kid and stuff, I would, when my sisters would want to do the game where you wrote down, a list of names of boys that that you might marry, and then you wrote down, what kind of house you were going to have, and like, all those back of the car on long trips games that we used to play. I went through all that, like that was what I was gonna do because I thought you were supposed to. I don't think at the time I really put it together with the idea of sex. I just thought.
But when you're 28, 29, 30, everyone's pairing up. Was people were worried about you? Or did they assume you were lesbian and they were like, that's none of our business? Like, what did they think?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. But I did. Then there's that other side of things where people go, well, you must be a lesbian.
Yep.
And then they get upset because you're not coming out as a lesbian. I remember being on stage one night and I said to the audience, I had some joke with it, but I've forgotten, but I said, I really don't like sex. And, some audience member shouted out, with women. And I said, can you see that would still be sex? But yeah, I definitely went through where I tried to figure out, and again, I always tell my kids, I go, years from now when I'm not busy, who knows?
Yeah.
I might just surprise
How
everybody.
young is the youngest kid?
26.
Oh, so you're in the clear, aren't you?
No.
Okay.
You're never in the clear.
Right,
honestly.
but you're not it's not lawnmower passing out phase, is it still?
No, it isn't. Although, where there's space, there's plenty of things that come into.
Yeah.
I'm still behind. I still have stacks of lists of things to do that haven't been touched.
Yeah.
I still have.
My mom's 90. She still has them.
Wow. Yeah. That's sad. I still have. I've lived in the house we live in now. I rent. I have had just pieces of fabric stapled to the top of the sill for curtains for 23 years.
Yeah.
And I've been meaning to, get them measured and order some sort of, Roman shade.
I like that you would get them. You couldn't do it yourself. Take 40 seconds.
I think you're supposed to have it measured in a particular way, I believe. They always say, we get professional.
I don't. I think
if you're going to go to the
internet,
expense
Paula,
of the Roman shade, if you're going to go to the expense of the Roman shade, then you may as well have somebody measure it properly.
Hey, you know how I've been encouraging the bidet lifestyle for, I don't know, got to be 20 years. Well, guess what? I'm still encouraging the bidet lifestyle. Ain't nothing changed. I had a bidet joke in Blocks. I have a bidet joke in my act now because I love bidets so much. I bought a bidet for my friend Jesse, and he whispered to me, it changed my life. I don't want to say it's like religion, but it's a different faith. That's my faith, is bidet. They sent me a Tushy. I've had bidets. They sent me a Tushy. I put the Tushy on in place of mine, and it's just as good. I had a very expensive one that an ex-girlfriend got me. Don't ask any questions. And it was just as good as the name big brand that I had. I put it on myself. It was super easy. You turn off a thing, attach a thing, turn it back on, and you've got a working bidet. I know nothing. You can adjust the heat of the thing. You can adjust the pressure. There's a whole lot you can do. It's not going to change your identity. My identity! You're going to be fine. Stay shower fresh all summer long and join the 2 million butts who have already switched to Tushy. For a limited time, our listeners get 10% off their first bidet order when you use code NEAL at checkout. That's 10% off your first bidet order at hellotushy.com, promo code Neal. I'm telling you, do it. Trust me. Tell them Neal sent you. Promo code Neal. Paul, it says that you avoid confrontation at all costs.
Oh, I'm not sure that that's entirely true, but it's pretty true.
I like that you tried to confront me a little bit, but not all the
no,
way.
I couldn't really push back. No, I do. I don't know if I'd say at all costs.
Well, not at all costs, but
yeah,
like
no,
often.
I am pretty woodsy. One time when I was a kid, I think it was like in high school, and they were our church used to have the church fair, and if you were a high school age kid, you could work a booth, right?
Yeah.
So I was so excited to go work on the lawn. They always had pony rides, and for years I had gone on the ponies, and now I was going to get to be one of the people helping out with the pony rides. And I don't know anything about horses at all still. But at the time, we're on this grassy area. And at one point, this horse that I had by the lead just stepped on my foot. Now, it wasn't on the pavement, so my foot could sink a little bit, and that was good. But it did step on my foot. And I just stood there. I didn't do anything. I didn't try to move the horse because I thought, well, what if you're not supposed to try to move the horse? I didn't ask anybody for help. I just let the horse stand on my foot until it decided to move. And oftentimes, that is kind of who I am in every other way. I just,
Here's a question that may be invasive. Did you grow up around alcohol? Alcoholism?
No.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because that's...
Well, listen, it's not hard to find alcohol.
No, but alcohol, was there an alcoholic head of house?
No.
Okay, because that has been my experience. Or my dad was a narcissist, and he's sort of like, they dictate everything. And maybe you're just generationally like from authoritarian parenting, and like you couldn't really speak up.
You know that old argument, nature versus nurture?
Yeah.
Nature kicks the living shit out of nurture. I'm not sure that nurture has anything to do with it. I mean, to the degree, yes, if somebody, is abused or, right. I just, okay, take, I don't know anything about Frederick Douglass's family life when he was little, but Frederick Douglass taught himself to read, and again, I don't know, I don't know if he lived with his parents when he was a slave. I don't know. But it kind of takes away this. He set a high bar for the rest of us.
Yeah.
To have such success and to have come from such difficult circumstances. What could any parent have said or done? For their in bondage?
I mean, I don't know if you remember being very young.
I remember the taste.
Something
of
tells
my
me
crib.
you were like, for real?
Yeah.
How did it taste?
I was in there for a long time.
Yeah. Well, what were you? How were you?
I remember. I think it had like some shellac shit on it, and so I still remember.
And
do
you feel like that's who that? I feel like you've been who you are from the beginning.
I kind of think we are largely.
Yeah. And
we are.
How young did you start dealing with your children? How young were they?
Oh, infants. My oldest daughter was 4.5 when she came to me, but I knew her since she was an infant. And I got to tell you, I mean, talk about somebody that was all but written in stone from early in life. She is. She is the strongest person I have ever known. Now,
willful.
Yes.
You're talking physically strong, or just
not physically strong, just in terms of now she can use that for good or evil at any point in her existence, but there was just nothing you were going to say to that kid that was going to change what she was going to do. And that may have been forged very early on in her life.
Yeah, I'm dealing with I was talking to my girlfriend last night about her son, and he hates losing. And she was like trying to teach him, that it's okay to lose and you can learn. And he's like, yeah, I get that. And he whispered to himself, but I have to win.
Oh, wow.
And you go, huh? And we were talking about there's a better chance of him having a successful life as a capitalist
Right.
if that's the ethos? Do you intervene and go, hey, chill with that? And to your point,
I don't know
right?
if you can. No, I think you have to make the effort. I think you have to make the effort. But
what if I believe winning is pretty important?
Well,
You know what I mean?
You know, I like to win. I think
Yeah.
everybody likes to win.
Yeah.
I bought for a friend years ago a slot machine, and when I gave it to him, we played with it, but it was like, it wasn't a slot machine from a casino. It was like a slot machine that you could buy. And when we played with it, which I hadn't thought of until it was there, and it wasn't cheap either. But it's useless. You don't care because there's nothing on the line.
Right. Yeah.
And
it's just a button.
Right. Yeah. And so winning or losing is meaningless with
no tension.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
so it's like I'm curious because I've heard a lot of people say like, no, my son, my daughter was them from the minute I looked at them.
Yeah.
It was pretty clear.
I think that's true. I think that's true. And the whole thing about people changing. Some people go, "Oh, people can't change." No, I think you can change. But I also think that you're born into. I have my entire life talked so much, and in my head, a lot of times I'm saying to myself, "Shut up, shut up, shut up," and I will, I'll write it down. I'll try to remind myself. I'll think about it before I encounter somebody. I'll think how I want to make sure that I'm not talking as much as I usually talk. I cannot.
Well, how did you stop drinking? Because that was the thing you clearly couldn't stop doing.
Yeah.
And then how did you stop?
Well, I was in silly, stupid rehab for a long time, for one thing.
Silly, stupid, that's the name of it?
Yeah.
What, you didn't like it?
It was okay. It was okay.
Can you at least think like it served its purpose or no?
Yeah, I think it did. It was a place where alcohol was not available to me.
Yep.
And that was helpful. And I
got
a little bit of time.
Did the shares help? Did any of it help?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you like the lack of alcohol?
It's funny. There was a woman. I was court ordered to AA for 5 years, and I went. I'm not an AAer, but I went because I had to. And there's a lot of reasons I dislike AA. I wouldn't want to take it away from somebody for whom it's helpful. But having said that, I do often think of a person I didn't even like, a person that would, when they would talk in these meetings, I just kind of felt like, oh, yeah. But this one woman said something one time. She said this great thing, and I think she said somebody else had told it to her, which is, when you're, upset or whatever, she goes, look where your feet are. And what she meant by that, as she explained, was, for example, now I'm with a very nice person. I'm in an air-conditioned studio.
Yeah.
I have plenty of water available to me in this bottle that I keep squeaking into the microphone. I'm fully clothed. Right.
The facts of your life.
Yeah. There's a roof over here. When I drive home, there'll be a roof over my head, right? Look where your feet are. It's a great reminder to kind of lower your temperature in certain, when you start
things
to
are not, if you're hearing us talk, things are going pretty well for you.
Right.
You know what I mean? You have some sort of device.
Right.
You have your headphones. You can afford stuff. You can most likely.
Yeah.
And
there are and in addition to that, there are difficult things. But from where you are, you'll cope with those things. You'll be, and I often refer to that when I talk about how I really dislike lots of things about AA, because it's not, I don't dislike everything. There were helpful things, and the thing about rehab, and if someone's feeling like maybe they shouldn't go to rehab. It is helpful to be in a place where alcohol is not available to you. And it's helpful to kind of, I think, focus on that problem.
It's funny because we did talk about the state mandating.
Well, that
contrition.
I have a big problem with.
As it pertains to you, can you tell me about it?
No, I have a big problem with the state sending people to AA.
Why? I'm interested in that.
Because, first of all, I'm an atheist.
Right.
Well, I used to say to people, at that, back when I was fighting that battle, I would say to people, well, I'm an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
And they would say to me, it doesn't have to be God. It can be the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, well, if I was drinking, that would make sense to me. It just,
Yeah.
and it's very dismissive of my atheism. And I remember at one point my son was going to, he was in a school in Virginia, and they took the kids to church on Sunday, and I hadn't been told that originally, and so at some point when I found out, I objected, and they kind of they're in Virginia,
not used
so
to it.
they looked at me like, "What's the matter with you?" And I said, I am a proud atheist, and I take my atheism as seriously as you take your Christianity. And I think the guy actually heard me when I said it that way, So this idea that, just go anyways. Just ignore that part. You know what? How about y'all? How about we do it my way and y'all just ignore your religion? No, nobody's going to go for that, right? So you have to.
Yeah.
But okay, so that's one thing that I object to. But the other thing is, and AA could fix this in a second. So what the judge will say, well, okay, you have to go to AA. And they'll tell you how often that you have to go. And
you had to go every day?
No, I had to go, I think, 3 times a week.
Yep.
And for 5 years. And
who's counting?
And I wasn't
the court.
And I wasn't busy enough. But the way they prove that you went was you have these cards. And you have to get your AA card signed, and then you have to, show it to the authorities. All of which I did. I did everything I was told I had to do. But the thing about AA, you were listing the 12 steps. But then what's the second thing they do? The 12
inventory, maybe?
No. It's
precepts or something.
And now you're talking about just like how AA works.
Yeah.
And one of the first things they say is we're a program of attraction, not promotion, I think is how they put it. Okay, I was not attracted, first of all. And in fact, I was...
You weren't promoted either.
Well, it was promoted by the court.
Well, yeah, it was
now,
enforced.
if you object, and I did, but what they'll tell you is, well, why? Why AA? Why? They'll say, well, because they have the best record for helping people. Okay, they do not.
Right.
They don't keep records.
Yeah.
Precisely. And if you
By the way, I like 12-step programs, and I agree with you. Like, I've gotten a lot of help from other 12-step programs, but you're not wrong.
Yeah.
So I say this it helped me, but I also understand where you're coming from.
Well, so here's the thing. So this is all AA has to do to make that part right, which is tell the courts they won't sign those cards. That's all they have to do.
Right.
Why is AA working hand in hand with the government?
Yeah.
That's absurd.
Yeah.
And by the way, you know what people used to say to me all the time? So when you go to AA, one of the things that they do with their members is for each meeting, there's several jobs. There's somebody who distributes literature. There's someone who greets people at the door. There's somebody who makes the coffee.
Treasurer. I was a treasurer.
Treasurer, right. So, is a way for people to contribute and to make them feel like they have to keep coming because they have this responsibility, all of which is lovely. But they have a person whose job is to sign the cards at the end of the meeting. And even the person who signed the cards used to say to me, why don't you just sign them yourself? And the answer is because I was told I have to do this thing.
Yep.
And I don't want to put it at risk.
Yep.
Right. I've lost enough. Thank you. And so it's not worth it to me. But all AA has to do is say, we're not going to sign cards. And then the government can't do that anymore. And they may find another way, but why should AA be complicit in that?
You're a terrible boss. I like that.
Boss. I am a terrible boss.
Because no one ever... I asked Letterman, I was like, did you like being a boss? He was like, no, it's not. Some of us are not temperamentally fit for being a boss with a good temperament, or even knowing how to get things done, or like I am overly a hard ass.
I just am not good at telling people what to do.
How do you feel about being told what to do? Because there's a part of you that's like, I'll do whatever.
I don't mind being told what to do.
Okay. But then there also is a part of you.
If it's logical, I don't like illogical things. I don't like wasting my time.
But
one of the things as a podcaster, and I have a podcast, it's called Nobody Listens to Paula Poundstone. And, we've been with a number of networks now. And the one that we're with now, they insist on having a meeting. And we have to have this Zoom meeting once a month, and even once a month feels like boy that month flies by, doesn't it? It's the stupidest damn meeting. And I've never been in a business where I've had to do that before. Like if you talk to people in the corporate world
all the time, every day, several times a day.
For years, I've done hosted benefits for an organization that used to be called the Valley Healthcare Clinic, I think it was. Within the time that I've known them, maybe they didn't change it more than once. I've worked with other organizations where they've changed their name more than once, but now they call it like Valley Health.
Yep.
Or something like that, right? Something like that. And so when I go on stage, I always tease them. I go, how many meetings did that take?
Yeah.
Because it did, and the truth is it doesn't make any difference at all. Maybe they know a way in which it does, but I doubt it.
Yep.
Same thing. What was the other one I used to do? Oh, I do. I have over the years, not so much right now, but I have over the years done a lot of work with an organization that was originally called Friends of the Libraries. And they've changed that name, 5 damn times. And I cannot imagine that it's made any difference at all to the work that they do, which is terrific work, by the way. Libraries are great places. But every time I entertain them, because that's really the biggest way in which I contribute is I go and entertain them during their conferences. Every time I can't resist tormenting them over how many times they've changed their name, because it's just the silliest.
So you don't.
Because they're having pointless meetings. That's
with a lot of comedians. I've noticed it in myself. Noticed in other people, the other comedians. We will do what we're told, and quietly resent it.
Oh yeah, well definitely that. Again, unless it. If it doesn't make sense.
If it makes sense, but we're more logical than most people. So
I don't know if I think that's true.
Okay.
Because first of all, when anybody says most people, or when one of the things that I loathe, and I will not tolerate this both sides do it thing in politics at all any longer, because it's so untrue. But there is one area where perhaps Democrats join in, maybe not to the same degree, but also do this thing that I loathe, which is to say, well, American believe
voters,
blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what? If you knew what all Americans believe, first of all, we don't. The very same person who says, we've never been more divided, and then a few sentences later they go, but Americans believe blah, blah, blah. We believe almost nothing as collective any longer.
I think we also believe, within ourselves, we all believe 10 different contradictory things.
Yeah, I think that's true. So this idea that we all as comics, you and I probably know a lot about how our brethren function, but not so much at all about how that compares to the rest of the world.
Well, I will say we charge money to hear our thoughts.
Yeah.
So I'm going to assume that our thoughts are novel in some way. I would argue they're extremely.
I don't think so.
They're extremely linear or extremely nonlinear. That would be the two things to charge for.
We just have the ego, because you can't be a comic without
agreed.
A big slice of ego pie. We just have the ego to go on stage and and to some degree feel driven, I think, to go on stage and say our thoughts out loud. But I don't think. I just don't think in outside of that we're all that different. I mean, Twitter is a great example. I'll post something on Twitter, and then somebody else will post something in response to that, and and then there'll be just chain of responses, and they are often so damned funny.
Yeah.
Or I'm following somebody who's not anybody. They're not a famous person.
Yeah, they're not
right?
famously funny.
And what they say is so damned funny.
Totally agree.
We do not carry the flame of the only
I don't think we're you may be overstate. I don't think we're the only funny people on earth. I just think we're consistently more funny, and we're doing a thing consistently that most people do occasionally.
But again, you just don't know that. The only difference is we have the ego to go on stage and do it. I gotta say, I've known comics that were consistently unfunny.
I totally agree.
And by the way, that doesn't mean they don't have followers. I would say
I totally agree.
They're just not people that amuse me.
I totally agree. I would just argue Mark Twain, Richard Pryor, etc., pretty unique thinkers.
Yeah.
God forbid. I don't think there's a lot of Mark Twains out there working construction, and people are going like, you shouldn't do anything with that.
Yeah.
Mark Twain. Yeah. You should keep digging. They would go, get the fuck out. You saw Good Will Hunting.
20 years, if you're still living here, coming over my house to watch the Patriots game, still working construction, I'll fucking kill you.
They tell them to get out of there.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is being a boss.
When you say Richard Pryor, it just makes me smile automatically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't Google him.
Yeah.
But he's a hilarious person.
Yeah.
These are all of the same ilk, by the way. The boss thing is very similar to avoiding confrontation. Being a boss is all confrontation.
Yeah, you're
it's
right.
All like,
it is.
Where is it?
Yeah.
I told you, you have to even explain it seems asshole. Like, I'm paying you to show up and do a thing. People are like, nowadays, especially like, my God, this is imperialist. But it's like, yes, it's imperialist.
Yeah.
I'm paying you.
But the other thing that happens in the world that I live in is that people that I've worked with for a really, really long time, and like my assistant, for example. There are times where I'm practically certain he doesn't know he works for me. The relationship has been a little bit skewed.
He knows you're not going to do anything.
Yeah, more than likely. That's the other thing. When you get to know anybody, they're a big old pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Everybody, there's negatives and positives, and the positives of the people that you remain friends with or you remain working with, the positives outweigh the negatives. And the same going the other way. I assume that my negatives have not yet built up to the degree where, when after the stay-at-home order hit, and I can't remember how many weeks we, survived where I was still paying my employees. And I don't have a huge amount of employees. I have a couple. But after a few weeks went by and I have no income, my accountants are like, you know what, you're not going to be able to do that. I still required the help of an assistant, but I could not pay because I didn't have, I would split what I had, but there wasn't enough income coming in that, right? So, so one day I tell, and then also I have a woman that takes care of my pets when I'm gone.
Yep.
And, I didn't want her to leave because then when I do start back on the road, it's a huge job. I get 10 cats, 2 big dogs. You can't just drop some food and then come back later. So, one day I have to say to them, I have to let you go. I can't pay anymore. I just don't have any money.
How did you feel? Ashamed?
Oh my God, I started to cry.
Yeah.
And, it got real quiet in my backyard because that's where we were at the time.
Uh-huh.
And
you were at your lectern? You were standing at your lectern in the backyard?
I was not at my lectern. I was in my backyard. I think I was hanging laundry on my, laundry hanger thing. And I don't think we talked about it anymore in that moment. But eventually, maybe the next day or something, Wendell comes to me and he says, look, if you go down, I go down, and he wouldn't leave. So, we didn't work on the same schedule.
Yeah.
He didn't come in necessarily every day, but they both stayed. And, with the PPP money, I gave it to them. But that was not enough. That's not enough to live for very long around here.
Yeah.
Right. So they both stayed. So I must have been a good enough boss
to stay.
And he's been with me.
Right. I don't think you're. I'm not.
years?
I don't think that when you say you're not a good boss, I know what you mean.
The
I think
reason
you're
I'm
not a good boss for
is 'cause
yourself.
I can't tell anybody what to do.
You tried?
I've gotten better at it.
As I'm sitting here, I was like, maybe if you made lists, which is a good.
I do. I leave a lot of notes.
Huh.
Yeah.
And it's still, and you still can't.
Well, sometimes, if you have an employee, right, and they're, Wendell's like a, Girl Friday to some degree. There's a pretty eclectic bunch of stuff there's some stuff that has to get done on a regular basis, and generally speaking it does, but then there's a bunch of other sort of eclectic stuff that comes up, and I'm forever writing a note and leaving it for him. I do the majority of my work at night, when I'm alone, where I'm getting organized, I'm doing paperwork, and I realize, this has to get done, right? So I write these notes, and they're always worded very politely, and I put them on his desk, and then I'll notice later that, boy, that's still there, isn't it? But if you have a certain amount of stuff that you have to get done, and then your boss keeps saying, and then this, and then this, and then that, well, you have to cherry pick what you can get done.
Yeah.
So there's going to be some stuff, just like what I do, that gets put off for a while. There's going to be some stuff that he puts off for a while.
Fair enough.
But if there was something like I'm just not, the thing of going, hey, didn't I ask you to do the blah, blah, blah? I can almost never do that.
Yeah, it's hard because you seem like, to your next block is, if I don't hear back from somebody and I don't know why, I scour my memory of our last interaction to find out what I did or said wrong, convinced that I put that person off.
Oh, yeah.
This is all the same rumination family.
Yeah. Yeah. Not helpful either, by the way, for the most part.
Because I'll send you a song that I made about this called Nobody's Mad at You.
Oh my God, that's a great idea
so
for
short.
A song.
It's one of the most popular things I've ever put on social media.
Wow.
It's very simple. I will send it to you because it's so good to remember. Nobody's mad at you. Nobody's mad at you. You're having a private experience. Nobody's mad at you. Nobody's mad at you. Nobody really gives a fuck.
Melanie did a song. I don't remember the name of it, but one of the lines was, I built and climbed a mountain and it wasn't there. And that is great for so many things, you think.
And have you gotten better at this or no? It's just like...
I think a little bit. Yeah. I think a little bit. We had these neighbors, and I don't know, it was within the first couple of years that I lived in the house that I live in. We had these neighbors that I just felt like, if I'd bump into them in the alley, they just sort of... maybe I never even was that close. I just felt like they looked at me funny.
Mm-hmm.
And I was convinced that I knew why. And it was because this about me, it's because that about me. And one day I hear from another neighbor who I knew, because these neighbors I didn't know. I had just moved there a little while ago. But I had some other neighbors that I actually knew. And they tell me that the wife died. And the next time I heard this neighbor in the alley, I went out and I said, I just heard about your wife and I am so, so sorry. And I said, and I want to apologize because I have been the worst neighbor. What I didn't say to him is, all this time, I thought you didn't like me. It never occurred to me. It was once I heard the wife died, I'm like, oh my gosh, she did look kind of ghostly pale, didn't she?
Yeah.
And once I realized it had nothing to do with me, and why do I do that? It's so annoying. But and by the way, ever since then we've been friends.
Yeah.
But all that time, right? Wasted energy, wasted thought, and couldn't they have used a hand?
Of course.
Yeah.
What do you consider the biggest successes of your life and the biggest failures of your life?
My oldest daughter has cerebral palsy,
Mm-hmm.
and she walks with no crutches. And I barked the orders, but she did the work, right? And a lot of times, in fact, pretty much all the time, she didn't want to. And it's one of those decisions that you make. Maybe I was right, maybe I was wrong. I don't know. And she can read. And she
Both of
loves
these things
to
are
read.
especially rare.
The way things were going with the school and with the place that I fostered her out of, those would not have happened. And I don't know, she'll maybe at some point in her life feel like she doesn't care about those things, or maybe she already thinks that. I don't know. I haven't asked. But those were, I feel like, I didn't give those things to her. As I say, I barked the orders and she did the work. I think without me barking the orders, I just think there was a window.
This runs counter to your nature-nurture thing.
Yeah. Well, again, I say she's the strongest person I've ever known.
But it sounded like you nurtured a lot of her.
I forced the issue.
Yeah.
Now, again, she may look back and feel like, well, why did I have to do exercises? Why did I have to do this? Why did I have to do that? I would have just been as happy in a wheelchair. She might well feel that. She maybe feels that already. I don't know. Or, why? I will say about reading, she loves to read. So, and the school, there's no way that school was teaching her to read. And it was, I made her read aloud to me every night all the way through high school. And against a good deal of resistance. And was there another way to do it? Not that I can think of. And so
that's a big success in your mind.
Yeah, in my mind it is. And maybe I'm giving myself more credit for it than it's due. I just don't know.
Yeah.
You can't control the variables and do it again. So I don't know. But I'm glad of that,
Something you're proud of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am. And it's interesting because there are things about her that have really changed a lot. Whereas she used to want everybody to do stuff for her. That was sort of her game. And I was always having to, catch people doing stuff for her and tell them not to. And I was always yelling at her about it, pretending to be less than she is.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't tolerate that. Whether I was right or wrong, I have no idea. But that was those were the coordinates with which I set my sails, and that's what I did. And she's so not like that now.
Yeah.
So.
Great.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so.
And any failures?
Oh, tons. Everything else.